Let there be light. Isaiah chapter 46. We've been going through this Isaiah. It's the biggest Bible study I've ever undertaken. For years I've read Isaiah. For 40 years I've read Isaiah and basically didn't understand most of it. Or, I mean, understand in the sense of a structure, to put it together, to see the flow of thought. But in the last few years, he's actually unlocked it for me, and I thank him. And I'm so glad that you want to know it, because it's the Word of God. It's the most quoted book in the New Testament by the apostles. The only book that Jesus quoted anywhere near as much as Isaiah is Psalms, believe it or not. And it's what a beautiful book. And look, Isaiah 46, 47, 48, they go together, okay? And basically what this is, this second half of Isaiah from 40 on concerns itself with something that had not happened when Isaiah was giving this prophecy, and that is the Babylonian captivity. Isaiah looked way down the road. That's the last thing he said in chapter 39. You will go into captivity in Babylon. That's how it ended, the first half. And now he looks way down the road, 70 years after the Babylonian captivity, and preaches these sermons to the remnant of Israel that are in captivity. The thing is, the people in captivity after 70 years, many of them had just adopted Babylonian gods. Many of them just made their home there, wanted to stay there, didn't want to leave. When you actually get the numbers in the books of Ezra and Nehemiah, people that actually finally came out of Babylon, it's a disappointing trickle. It's a very disappointing trickle. But it's exactly what Isaiah said. A remnant shall return. And God makes direct appeal to the children of Israel in captivity before they were in captivity. Can you imagine what a comfort these chapters were when everything that Isaiah said would happen came to pass? The people are in captivity. Now, this is part of this great Isaiah 40 through 49 or 48 is all one section. All basically one sermon or a series of sermons that run into each other to the captives. And in this part, he talks about what will happen to Babylon. And this must have come as quite a surprise, because to the Jews in captivity for 70 years, their God had been mocked, ridiculed. They'd been mocked, ridiculed. They'd lived as slaves. The Babylonians seemed invincible, the most powerful nation on the earth. As even Daniel the prophet said, you are the head of gold, Nebuchadnezzar. But here, listen to this prophecy. Bel bows down. Nebo stoops. Their idols were upon the beasts and upon the cattle. Your carriages were heavy loaded. They are a burden to the weary beast. Now, let me stop right here. Bel is the chief god of the Babylonian pantheon. He's also known as Bel Marduk. Okay. Bel is the chief pantheon. His name comes into the names. The Babylonian names put the names of their gods like Hebrew names. So you have Belshazzar. Bel will help him. That's what that means. Okay. Nebo is the son of Bel, and he's the second chief god. You got his name in some of the Babylonian names, like Nebuchadnezzar. Okay. The strength of Nebo. Okay. But Isaiah is prophesying against the gods of Babylon. Bel is bowed down now. Nebo stooped. The idols, so he distinguishes them as persons from the statues. The idols were upon the beasts and upon the cattle. Your carriages were heavy loaded. They are a burden to the weary beast. So this is one of the things that only comes clear in the New Testament. This whole issue of gods or God. We are monotheistic, and so is the Old Testament. Who is like thee, though, among the gods? So we even you quoted a psalm that said, among the gods, okay. Look, there are gods, but they aren't God, okay. There are gods, they aren't God, and neither are they statues. And even the people that make these statues don't really believe that they are statues. Those statues are like points of contact. All the gods of the nations are demons. Bel and Nebo are demons. Allah is a demon. All false gods are demons. And Isaiah sees them, though. They are the help of Babylon. They are supposedly what the Babylonians thought made them great. But now he sees them stoop down. Now he sees them crouching, is what it literally says. And then what he says, that's a really money quote, they are a burden. They are a burden to the weary. Verse 2, they stoop, they bow down together. They couldn't deliver the burden. They themselves are gone into captivity. They can't deliver the burden. What happened to Bel and Nebo's statues is when Cyrus the Great conquered Babylon, he took the statues. He was like modern people. All religions are fine as long as you don't hurt anyone. But he did take his vengeance out on Bel and Nebo. Okay, took the statues off to Persia and sold them. They hauled them on carts. Because these gods, the point he's going to make is these gods can't carry anybody. They have to be carried. And as a matter of fact, they're a burden. How many are glad they're not like our God? Verse 3, hearken unto me, O house of Jacob, and all the remnant of the house of Israel, which are born by me from the belly, which are carried from the womb. Notice the contrast? Beasts of burden have to carry Bel and Nebo. Our God carries us. Our God picks us up and carries us. One of my favorite scriptures in the New Testament is 1 Peter 5:7. Cast all your cares on him, for he cares for you. Verse 4, even to your old age I am he, even to your hoary hairs will I carry you. I have made and I will bear, even I will carry and I will deliver you. Three things. I made you. I will carry you. I will bear you. And the third one, I will deliver you. He's talking to people 400 miles from home in Babylonian captivity after 70 years of humiliation, who had lost their faith for the most part, and their God had been ridiculed, but God speaks to them through the prophet Isaiah before they even get there. To whom will you liken me and make me equal and compare me that we may be like? They lavish gold out of the bag. They weigh silver in the balance. They hire a goldsmith. He makes it a god. They fall down, yea, they worship. They bear him on the shoulder. They carry him, and they set him in his place, and he stands from his place. He won't move. He can't do anything. Yeah, you could cry unto him. He can't answer. He won't save you out of trouble. Remember this. Show yourself men. Bring it again to mind, O ye transgressors. Now he's talking to the children of Israel. They had gotten hard. They were in unbelief. They were tempted and in many cases succumbing to belief in the Babylonian system. And he's saying, look, they've got to be carried. They've got to be created. I'm the one that created you, but they created their own gods and worshiped them. And then he brings up this point that he consistently brings up in this passage. Remember the former things of old. I am God, there is no one else. I am God, there is none like me. This is a great theology, right? I declare the end from the beginning, and from ancient times the things that are not yet done, saying, my counsel shall stand, and I will do all my pleasure. Dave Hunt used to preach about this verse a lot, and he'd say, this is his credentials. Someone says, why should I believe the Bible? Well, you should believe the Bible because this God of the Bible called the future from the past in great detail, and never has he been refuted by events. Never. My counsel will stand. And then he goes on to say, I call the ravenous bird from the east, the man that executes my counsel from a far country. Yea, I have spoken it. I will bring it to pass. I have purposed it. I'll do it. Notice the way he talks. I have called. And then he says, I will do. Remember, this is Isaiah 200 years before this event. The calling of Cyrus, whose battle flag was a hungry bird of prey. Okay. Hearken unto me, you stout-hearted. He's talking to the children of Israel again. In other words, they're hard-hearted. They're in unbelief. That are far from righteousness. They're not right with God. The captivity hardened them. He makes a tremendous promise here to people that are far from God. I will bring near my righteousness. It will not be far off. And my salvation shall not tarry. And I will place salvation in Zion, for Israel my glory. What's he saying? Look, I still chose you. I'm not done with you. I'm going to save you. You can't get to my salvation. I'll bring it to you. My salvation will come to you. Now maybe they thought, well, we can't get to the temple. We're 400 miles away in slavery and exile. He says, I'll bring it to you. We can't get to heaven. What's his gospel? Then heaven will just come down to you. They had no idea what that meant, although he'd make it clearer and clearer. My salvation, my righteousness. Notice the way he words it. You can never attain a righteousness of your own. You can never start with a righteousness that will be pleasing to God. The righteousness that God gives us is the only righteousness that we need and that we can have that will truly make us pleasing to God. The salvation that God brings to us, that's the only one. We can't attain salvation. God had to bring it to us. Why did Jesus have to come down from heaven? Because we couldn't get there. My salvation is coming to you, he's saying. My righteousness is not very far off. I'm thinking of the words of Moses. The word is nigh you. It's in your mouth and in your heart. The word of faith which we preach. That if you confess with your mouth the Lord Jesus and believe in your heart that God raised him from the dead, you shall be saved. But he goes on because there's no chapter break. The sermon continues. He just talked about the Babylonian gods and their humiliation and their captivity. They're the ones going into captivity. Now he talks to Babylon himself. Now listen to this, because this is quoted in the New Testament, very important place. Come and sit in the dust, O virgin daughter of Babylon. Sit on the ground. There is no throne, O daughter of the Chaldeans. For you shall no more be called tender and delicate. What's he predicting? The humiliation of Babylon. The queen of the nations, as she called herself, and considered herself, is going to be transformed into a slave. Sit on the ground there. Get off that throne. Sit down in the dust, daughter of the Chaldeans. You will no longer be considered tender and delicate. You know, people that are powerful and rich and secure can afford to be tender, delicate, easily hurt, so they're protected and everything. He's saying that's all going to be stripped away from you because, and he'll give the reasons why, but the queen has to get off the throne. She's going to become a slave, and she'll be humiliated and no longer considered tender and dainty. Okay. Take the millstones and grind meal. Uncover your locks. Make bare the leg. Uncover the thigh. Pass over the rivers. All of this is the language of slavery, of degradation, of the humiliation of the woman. By the way, he calls Babylon the virgin daughter. Let me explain why. Now that was the name for Jerusalem, virgin daughter of Zion. He calls Babylon the virgin daughter because she called herself that. In a city, to be called a virgin daughter would be to say, no one has ever taken this city. We're totally impregnable. We're immune. And Babylon had 14 miles of walls that were like 60 feet wide, 30 feet high, fortresses at every angle. I mean, they considered themselves absolutely, totally, completely secure. And he's giving them the name, the virgin daughter of Babylon, because he's saying, up till now, you've never been invaded. You've never been attacked. He said, so he gives her degrading instructions, what you would tell a slave. Take those millstones and grind that meal. Uncover your locks. In those days, a modest and a good woman would have their hair all put up in a covering of some kind. And to be degraded and debased would be to just, rip off the veil that's on your head. Make bare the leg. Well, no lady would ever dream of doing that, but slaves would have to get down there in the river and do the laundry, pushing, and they're sitting there pulling up their dress and walking across creeks and sewers and who knows what, and uncover your thigh and pass over the rivers. Thy nakedness shall be uncovered. Shame, loss of authority. He says, your nakedness will be uncovered. Your shame shall be seen. I will take vengeance, and I will not meet thee as a man. Well, this is really, really a powerful prediction there, okay? This is me doing this to Babylon, God says. Now the captives that are hearing this would be stunning to them, because as far as they're concerned, their own God had been defeated. They had been defeated. There is no hope in the religion of Zion, and there is no salvation that can come from God. The Babylonians are the future and the power, the world power. By the way, Babylon becomes a metaphor for all the world power. What you're seeing today happening in the world is Babylon. Babylon is the world power of defiance and rebellion against God. Babylon is the symbol for man, the way he tries to organize himself to the exclusion of the God of the Bible. That's why not only does Isaiah say, Babylon the Great is fallen. Where else do we see that? The book of Revelation. The end is Babylon against Jerusalem. And in worldly terms, Babylon is all powerful, all dignified, all glorified. Notice the expression, Babylon the Great. That's in Revelation. Remember what the king told himself? King Nebuchadnezzar in chapter 4. Isn't this Babylon the Great that I have built for the glory of my name? That same spirit is in this world today. Our leaders are all intoxicated with the wine of Babylon. And another aspect of Babylon is the violence and cruelty of Babylon. Now, that's why this is a very, very important chapter of the Bible. This is a revelation from God as to the psychology of the world power, of those that resist God, of those that are forming right now, coming to their great pinnacle of time and power. That we're not to be intimidated. We're not to be afraid of them. We are to see their end and believe in the salvation that God has promised us in the second coming of Jesus. Amen? He says, now listen, he says, as for our Redeemer, the Lord of hosts is his name, the Holy One of Israel. So right in the middle of this denunciation of Babylon, you've got this little interjection. Because God said, I'll take vengeance. I'm coming to take vengeance on Babylon for what you did to my people. And so the response is, the Lord is our Redeemer. The Lord of hosts is his name. The Holy One of Israel. So the third one, all three of these are his qualifications to take vengeance on Babylon. Number one, the Lord our Redeemer. That is an expression, I think I talked about it before, Gael, which means a kinsman redeemer. That if you were poor, if you were powerless, if you got yourself into servitude somehow, your closest of kin could step forward and redeem you out of slavery. Well, the closest of kin to lowly Israel that lives like a slave, lives like a widow, lives like a completely defeated people, their closest relative is the Lord himself, Yahweh. He says, I'm your Redeemer, and he is the Lord of hosts. That means he is a God for whom everything is possible and nothing is too difficult. All possibilities and powers and potentials are in his hand, right? He is the Lord of hosts. And then the third one has to do with he's qualified to do this by his character. He is the Holy One of Israel. He's absolutely, utterly holy. And that's one of Isaiah's favorite terms for him. You can see why when you remember his vision in Isaiah 6. He goes back to denouncing Babylon. So these denunciations apply to our world. By the way, one of the things I thought of when I was reading this, these denunciations apply to America. This reminds me of America. I'm not saying America's Babylon. I actually believe that America is a nation that has two souls, a Puritan and a prostitute. And our whole history is a constant back and forth, a struggle between these two principles. Now, the prostitute prevails, and one of the reasons why I believe it will is because the rapture. We're getting out of here. He says, sit thou silent, get thee into darkness, O daughter of the Chaldeans, for you will no longer be called the Lady of Kingdoms, or what it's translated, the Mistress of Kingdoms, or the Queen of Kingdoms. All have the same idea, and that idea is that if you have a real nobility lady, then she always has a lot of ladies in waiting, sitting there at her beck and call and primping and preening over her because she's the center, or even more so, a queen. They have grooms that surround them, ladies that are lesser than she, and they live to please her. Look, that's what the mentality of Babylon was. The Lady of Kingdoms, the Queen of Kingdoms, the Mistress. It's all three of those words would fit with the Hebrew. No longer, he said, you're going to lose your status. No longer will you be called the Lady of Kingdoms. Go be quiet. In other words, before she always had a say because she was so powerful. She had a say in world affairs. In the days of Nebuchadnezzar, if he decided to, he could take out a whole nation. Everybody knew it, and everybody trembled. But now, be quiet and go into the darkness, which is obscurity. You will not be famous. You will not be desired. You will not have streams of people coming to you to see what you have to say or to get something from you or to partake of your dainties, your delicacies, your luxuries. You are going into obscurity. And he gives a reason why. Verse 6. I was wroth with my people. I was. This is why we did 2 Kings. By the time you're done with 2 Kings, you just can't believe the stubbornness of the people of God. You can't believe he'd want anything to do with them. You could see why there'd be a captivity. The only question is, why didn't it happen 500 years earlier? It's just one letdown after another letdown. But the patience and love and mercy of God prevailed. How many are glad for the patience of God in our own life? I marvel at the patience of God for our country. But finally it came, the day of wrath came. The thing that Isaiah warned about, the thing that all the prophets warned about came. And the unthinkable happened. They defiled the temple. Remember the virgin daughter of Zion, but they got into the most holy place and desecrated it. They could not believe that happened. But God's saying, here, I did that. And I used Babylon to do that. Now, if we were doing Jeremiah, you'd see so many times where God names Nebuchadnezzar as my servant. Okay, I'm going to use my servant. I've stirred up Nebuchadnezzar. I've given him the victory. I mean, in the ancient history, Babylon came out of nowhere. They were just a little regional has-been. And the Assyrian Empire was the great power. But eventually they prevailed. Isaiah predicted all this. But it didn't happen in his lifetime. Now he's predicting their end. I was wroth with my people. I polluted my inheritance. You know what? Polluted is a religious term. In other words, I made them ritually and ceremonially unclean. I let that temple just be destroyed. Like he told them several times from the book of Judges on, if you ever go into idolatry, I'll just take that temple and throw it behind my back. I polluted my inheritance. I gave them into your hand, and you, though, you showed them no mercy. Upon the elderly, even upon the elderly, you very, very heavily laid the yoke. Now, time and again, we'll see this in the Bible, too. God will use a pagan nation. But if they go too far, then he comes back on them. You took it further, see? You forgot two major things. Number one, that there is a divine retribution. And number two, that God's people themselves are central, even if they're out of sorts with him. We were just reading in Genesis as a family the other day, I will bless those that bless you and curse those that curse you. He says, Babylon, I let you be raised up. I was going to use you, but you took it further. You were unnecessarily cruel. You showed no compassion, not even to the elderly, he says. And you said, verse 7, this is where it really gets into the psychology, I shall be a lady forever. I'm going to be, now this is their mentality, we are going to be the mistress of all the world forever. All the other nations around are just going to be waiting on us, grooming us, trying to get something from us. Ladies in waiting. I will be a lady forever. And you didn't lay these things to your heart, neither did you remember the latter end of it. So Babylonian psychology is, this is going to go on forever. It's never going to stop. And we could do anything we want to anybody, even the Jews. They're in our power. I mean, is there anyone that's going to stop us? Is there anyone going to bring us to account? Is there anyone that's going to call us on it? He said, you should have put it in your heart. You should have laid it in your heart. Therefore, hear now this, you that are given to pleasures. What it literally says is, listen to me, you wanton woman, that dwell carelessly, that say in your heart, now listen to them, I am, and there's no one besides me. What? Yeah, this is the core of the spirit of Babylon. Human self-deification. I am. No one else beside me. You know, when you see the wreckage going on in America today, if you have been around long enough, you can remember back to the 70s when everything was self-esteem. Looking out, there was a book, Looking Out for Number One. There was a popular magazine, Self Magazine. Everything was about you got to be true to yourself. There was even people going on TV and radio saying, divorce is still very important even if you have kids because you got to take care of yourself first. That was the philosophy. That's ancient. I am. There's nobody else. This is the principle of Babylon that still exists to this day. I am. I don't have to think about anyone else. Really what I should be thinking about is me. I got to have some me time, all right? I am, and there's no one else. And besides that, this is what they said in their heart. Now, this is funny because this is 200 years before, but Isaiah is calling them out. I will not sit as a widow, neither shall I ever know the loss of children. Now let me talk about this. In the ancient world, like the worst disaster that could ever happen to you is that. That'd be a double desolation. In one day, you could lose your husband and your children. Are you kidding? Who's going to take care of you? Who's going to provide for you? Who's going to defend you? It's a guaranteed loss of status, loss of provision, loss of protection, loss of your whole future. The Social Security was your children. And she says, nope, not me, never. Never going to be a widow and never going to lose my children. Now, how could the city of Babylon become a widow? Well, these kings were treated like gods. They were the husband, and they were actually incarnations of Bel and Nebo. Okay. So we'll always have the Nebuchadnezzars, the Belshazzars. We'll always have the Nabonidus, all right? We're going on to victory after victory after victory. Now, I'll tell you something funny from Daniel's book, which really gets into this, is that God tried to warn Nebuchadnezzar the future of Babylon. Remember that? He gave him a dream that was the most unusual dream. It took you all the way to the end of time. It's human geopolitics all the way to the end. And basically what he said is this: Nebuchadnezzar, there is going to be 4 stages of the world humanistic project. And they're represented by a statue of a man, and the top stage, in other words, the zenith, is you, a head of gold. And then the shoulders is silver, so that's a little bit less, but that'll be powerful. And then the waist and loins will be bronze. That's not as good as gold or silver. And then the final stage, which will be long in two halves, will be the legs of iron all the way down to the last stage, the weakest of all, iron mixed with clay. And then a stone will come from heaven that wasn't made by human hands and will hit the statue, right, and the feet. And it won't just be broken, it'll be shattered to powder. And then the wind will blow it away, and then there'll be nothing there. That's the whole future of humanism and the humanistic, pagan, self-worshiping enterprise. And guess what? We're in the last stage. But then that's in Daniel 2, but then what do you see in Daniel 3? Nebuchadnezzar makes a statue of a man, but there's a difference. It's all gold. What's the statue a statement of? It's a rejection of the dream that is the Word of God about the future of humanism, and says, no, it'll always be the golden age. Humanism will go on, and man will always be in the golden age. Now, that's very modern right now, right? There's a lot of people think we are on the verge of the best times ever. If we can just get rid of those Christians. See, I'm going to always be a lady. Everything and everybody is going to revolve around me. I'll be the mistress of all the kingdoms, and I'll never, never become a widow, and never will I lose my children. Verse 9, these two things will come to you in one moment, in one day. You're going to get both, a double desolation. Now, try to put yourself in the first people that ever heard this. Not their first, but they're slaves in Babylon. It's almost time for them to go home. And they think that they're the defeated widow without children. They think that Babylon is the power, the world power. That's the way it is now. The world power, man, that's where it's at. The woke, the politically correct, the financially correct, the powers, science, technology. The church, nothing. Hold your finger in Isaiah and 47, turn to Isaiah 54. See, they thought they were the widow without children. They thought they were the one that lost their husband. They never lost their husband. God says your husband is your maker. The Lord of hosts is his name. He didn't die. Okay. They saw the last son of David, though, have his eyes put out after he saw his sons killed by pagans. They thought that made him a widow. And then they themselves were carried into captivity. They lost all their children. Israel was like denuded of people. But listen, Isaiah 54, sing, O barren, you that didn't bear, break forth into singing, cry aloud, you that did not travail a child. More will be the children of the desolate than the children of the married wife, saith the Lord. Enlarge the place of thy tent, let them stretch forth the curtains of thine inhabitants. Spare not, lengthen thy cords, and strengthen thy stakes. You will break forth in the right and on the left, and thy seed shall inherit the Gentiles, and make the desolate cities to be inhabited. You're not going to be without children, Israel. You're going to have more children, you know where to put them. After I save you, after your discipline, after you finally get it, that you don't worship idols, you worship God and him alone. Go back to Isaiah 47. Babylon had a lot of reasons why they were destroyed. They were insensitive to what God actually privileged them with, is the custody of the children of Israel. And they abused it. They actually thought, wow, we beat that God, and we can do anything we want with these people. And you could see that attitude in Daniel 5, when they said, you know what, let's have a drunken orgy. This is while the Persians are outside the city. They're so confident. I'm not going to die. Then they dared. Hey, you know what would be fun? Go down to the trophy museum and get the tools, the holy instruments, the cups, the sacred shovels, the forks, the spoons, the plates from the temple of that defeated god. And let's praise the gods of silver and gold with these cups. My gosh. Who do you think you are? They're arrogant. Did you know that our world leaders and the elite, they have a very similar feeling about God? That the true faith in God and true believers in God are a relic from another time, a defeated, discredited, debunked, mythical religion that if you're going to grow and be accepted by the powers that be, you got to cast that out the window. They have no idea what's coming. And there's other problems. Verse 9, these two things will come to you in a moment. In one day, the loss of children and widowhood. One day, Cyrus entered the city, killed the king, so they became a widow. Took 3 days for the city to realize what had happened. But in one day, Babylonian empire is wiped out. I worry about these demonstrations and protests. You know why? Because you would never think a powerful country would just allow this to happen. Now they're getting into the symbolic. Here and in England, they're just tearing down statues of Western history. Almost like they want to erase it, wipe it out. And either the leaders are too craven, or they have a darker agenda to put a stop to it. I mean, when even policemen get on their bellies and prostrate themselves before a murderous terror organization like Black Lives Matter. It's stunning. Pastors, oh, can I wash your feet? That's not what John 13 is about. Anyway, we could go down. See, we're America the Great. We could go down. Anything can happen. And besides that, we have other problems just like they did. Listen to this. They shall come on thee in their perfection. What's that? Widowhood and loss of children. In perfection, what do you mean? Absolute fullness. There's no question about it. You'll become a widow and you're going to lose your children all in one day. You know why? Because the multitude of your sorceries and the great abundance of your enchantments. People have studied Babylon very extensively. They found a library there that had 70 volumes of auguries and omens. That's occult interpretation of all events. You see a black crow fly past the moon at 12, they got something in the book. Actually, you could study it there. You could become an expert in that, or in the stars. You could divide the heavens. That's what astrologers are. It's people that divided the heavens and tried to get control or tried to get knowledge of the future and of life so that they could be the masters and so they could say, I'll be a lady forever. We will never go down. And he says, you for the multitude of your sorceries and for the great abundance of your enchantments. Well, you can learn curses. You know, Harry Potter is a textbook for learning how to do the occult. It's witchcraft. And yet people think it's very charming, all these kids that learn all this stuff. This is what destroyed Babylon. This is what's destroying our world, the occult. For you had trusted in your wickedness. And you said, now listen to this, no one sees me. You know what that means? No, they knew people saw what they did. They meant, no one can really put a stop to me. No one can stand up to me. No one's going to put me in my place. Your wisdom and your knowledge, it's perverted you. It's twisted you. You know, usually wisdom and knowledge are a good thing, but only if it's to the service of the Lord. And according to the Old Testament, there's like the wisdom of the Egyptians, there's the wisdom of God, there's the wisdom of the Babylonians. Each one is their own wisdom. Now, someone says, well, I bet we could get a lot of good things out of the wisdom of the Babylonians. I wouldn't. Even a broken clock might be right twice a day, but you still don't use one. Really, their wisdom was human deification and the use of the occult and sorcery and enchantments and stargazing and hypnotism. And look what he says, your wisdom has twisted you. And you know what? Then you said something even worse than what you said before. You said in your heart, I am. And there's no one else besides me. That's a step higher. That's Isaiah 45. That's what Yahweh said. I am and there is no other. Babylon said, no, I am and there's no other. I am is the name of God. Therefore shall evil come on you. You won't even know where it came from. When it rises, and mischief shall fall on you, you won't be able to put it off. Destruction shall come on you suddenly. You won't know. Such is the end of Babylon. Now, Babylon is at its peak again. It's at its phoenix again. America is a great big leader in Babylon. Science and technology can save us, so we can do whatever. We can remake the world in our image, and they don't like Christianity. And they do love the occult. And there's a lot more occultism at the top than you would ever imagine. He said, therefore shall evil come on you. You won't even know where it came from, or where it rises. Mischief shall fall on you. You won't be able to put it off. Desolation shall come on you suddenly. You won't know. Now, this is quoted, Isaiah 47 is quoted in Revelation, where it has the great world merchant mart, where the merchandising and buying and selling is at the finest level it's ever been. And we've lived to see a lot of this. Remember the old days when you used to have to go to a store? You used to have to get in your car and go somewhere to buy something, and you have to watch TV to get advertisement or something like that. Now we get advertised 24/7 on these little things and all this bombardment, right? You don't have to go to the store, just push a button. You can get anything you want. And Revelation 18 has this merchant mart where it says everything you can get, even the souls of men. Hold your finger at Isaiah. Look with me in Revelation 18. I'm fixing to close, but I want you to see this. This is really important, I think. And it's Revelation 18, verse 4. And I heard another voice from heaven saying, come out of her, my people, that you be not partakers of her sins, and that you receive not of her plagues. For her sins have reached unto heaven, and God hath remembered her iniquities. Now, I saw an article the other day that talked about the new religion of wokeness, and it was pretty powerful. Everyone that's really in tune is saying the same thing, that what you're seeing in the streets is a religious movement. And this subtitle of this article was, and thousands of Christians are being converted into it, and they don't even know it. Because it's a different sin scheme, a different redemption scheme, a different scheme of confession of sins. And here you have people, getting on their knees or kissing people's feet. This is not Christian. It's Antichrist. Anyway, reward her even as she rewarded you. Double to her, double according to her works. In the cup which she filled, fill it double. How much she hath glorified herself and lived deliciously. So much torment and sorrow give her. For she said in her heart, I sit a queen. I'm no widow. I'll never see sorrow. Therefore her plagues will come in one day. Death, mourning, famine, and she shall be utterly burned with fire. For strong is the Lord God who judges her. Go back. Isaiah predicted all this. You know, it reminds me too of like in the chapter in Isaiah on the king of Babylon. He's talking to the king of Babylon, predicting his destruction. Then all of a sudden he's talking to Satan, the real king of Babylon. Lucifer, son of the morning, will you really be exalted to heaven? You will be cast down to hell. Why? Because you said in your heart, I will be like the Most High God. I will exalt myself against the stars. I'm a lady. All the other ladies have to wait on me. I'll never be a widow. I'll never lose my children. Wow. Verse 12. Stand now with thine enchantments and with the multitude of thy sorceries, wherein you have labored from thy youth. If so be, you will be able to profit. If so be, you will prevail. He says, go on, get your enchantment book out and try to ward off what's coming. You think you're going to succeed? You are wearied in the multitude of your counsels. Let now the astrologers, the stargazers, the monthly prognosticators stand up and save you from these things that shall come upon thee. Behold, they will be as the stubble. Fire will burn them, and they will not deliver themselves from the power of the flame. Therefore, there shall not be a coal to warm at, nor fire to sit before it. In other words, he's saying the fire that's coming is not going to be something you want to sit around like a campfire. It's going to devour the occult. It's going to devour the people you trust in. Thus shall they be unto thee with whom thou hast labored, even thy merchants from thy youth. They will wander every one to his quarter. None will save you, Babylon. Now, I can't take you through 48. I don't have the time, and I don't think you have the time, but I'll take you to the last few verses of it, because basically he's telling these people in captivity, Babylon's going down. It's the last thing they ever imagined. And he's telling them, she's the one that's going to be the widow. She's the one that's going to lose her children. Israel, you're still my chosen, and you will have seed. You will have more than you know what to do with if you just come through this test. But would you listen to me? That's what he keeps saying. Listen! And I mean, he's really rough on them in 48. He's saying you're stubborn, you're impenitent, you're hard-hearted, but he's just as implacable in his love and covenant love for them. And he says finally that, verse 18, oh, that you had hearkened to my commandments. Then had thy peace been as a river, and thy righteousness as the waves of the sea. You know what he's saying there? If you guys had just listened, you wouldn't have gone through all this stuff. If we just listened to God. And I think he's saying that to people today. He might be saying to people we're talking to right now. I know he said that to me. If you just listen, you'd save yourself so much grief. Listen to God. Not man, God, for God speaks. He said, thy seed also would have been as the sand, and the offspring of thy bowels like the gravel thereof. His name would not have been cut off or destroyed from before me. Get you forth out of Babylon. He said, now I'm telling you again at the end of the captivity, leave Babylon. Because you know what the idea among the Jews was? Hey, we've made a good life here, 70 years. I got a business, and we're thriving here. Why should we leave? He said, get out. Flee from the Chaldeans. With a voice of singing declare ye, tell this, utter it even to the end of the earth. Say, the Lord has redeemed his servant Jacob, and they thirsted not when he led them through the deserts. He caused the waters to flow out of the rock for them. He clave the rock also, and the waters gushed out. You're going to relive the Exodus. And then you know that the section of Isaiah is done because of the last verse. There is no peace, saith my God, for the wicked. Father, in the name of Jesus, take these verses and this exposition, and please breathe the breath of life on it. Encourage your people to be faithful to you, for we parallel them. We're your people. We live in a captivity. We're in Babylon. We're surrounded with Babylon, and yet we want to hold faith and a good conscience. Help us never to succumb, but to hold forth you, your word, your love, your gospel, to never depart from the gospel. In Jesus' name, amen. God bless you all.